Hello, my name is Kelsey Edwards, and I did my proposal on the deterioration period of latent fingerprints after extended durations submerged in river water. A little bit of background on this topic. Water is one of the most common disposal methods for weapons used to commit crimes. Criminals often think that they can just dump their weapon down the sewer, in the ocean, or in a river, and they think that it can never be traced back to them. However, we know that fingerprints can be lifted from these items, whether it be from a firearm or a knife or any other type of weapon. What's not currently known is how long it takes for those fingerprints to break down and deteriorate completely to the point where they can't be processed. And determining an exact timeline on how long these fingerprints last could greatly benefit law enforcement. Living in Cape Girardeau, I figured that the Mississippi River is right here and would be a perfect media to test out this experiment. River water is unique because it's composed of different types of runoff. It's fed by streams and other rivers, as well as runoff from when it rains. We live in a very agricultural area, and that plays a huge part in, what kind of things are in the river. They flow with a current, usually always downhill, forced by gravity. They flow over large areas that can, cover huge expanses. For us in the United States, the Mississippi spreads from many states, and in some areas, rivers literally cross continents. The temperature and depth of the water of the river also are unique. In certain areas, it's darker. In some areas, it's colder. This is influenced not only by the seasons, but also the depth of how deep the water is at that point. As well as other things, certain currents bring down colder water that can influence the temperature of the water. Fingerprints are unique to each individual person and remain unchanged for the duration of your life, unless your fingertips get burnt and have scar tissue, or if you have a cut and it heals and it'll change the pattern that's on your fingerprint. There's 3 basic types of fingerprints. There's arch, loop, and whirl. These are the general patterns that almost everyone in the population has. But within each of those 3 subsets, there's something called gaults and details, which include bifurcations, ridge endings, enclosures, and these type of specific details make your fingerprint 100% unique. For example, I have loop fingerprint patterns, but the gault and details on my own fingerprints make it different from someone else who would have a loop fingerprint. Latent fingerprints in particular are impressions of the ridges composing your fingerprint, and the actual fingerprint is the residue and water, elements, oils, salt, and any other organic materials that your hands have come in contact with. When you touch something, everything that's covering that outer layer of skin over your friction-ridged skin will leave a fingerprint. There's different methods to developing latent fingerprints that can be used, and most of the time it depends on the nature of the surface, what kind of technique that you should use. The most common is black powder dusting. It's usually used on non-porous surfaces like glass or metal. That's basically the ones that you see in every, crime movie or TV show, where they sprinkle the black powder over the fingerprint and they can lift it up with tape. There's also cyanoacrylate fuming, which is also known as superglue. Not many people know that this can be used to process a latent fingerprint. Cyanoacrylate can be used on non-porous or porous items, and the superglue really, it coats the outside of the latent print, and really makes it permanent, so you can dust over that cyanoacrylate and lift a print multiple times without damaging the print. It really encases over the print and makes it completely permanent. And finally, there's small particle reagent, or a molybdenum 5-sulfide, and that's used for wet surfaces. There's there's a few different solutions that small particle reagent can be made out of, but molybdenum 5-sulfide is the most common. There's been a couple previous experiments testing the duration of how long fingerprints last on items. One was done at George Washington University in Washington, D.C., and they tested for the duration of a latent print that was submerged. What they did was they took water from the Potomac River and they brought it back to their lab in tubs and placed their items into the tubs of water just underneath the hood, just to sit in the lab. Paul Nelson was the man who ran this experiment, and he dried and cleaned the items before he processed them. Like after he took them out of the water, he let them dry and then cleaned them and then processed them. And he did this experiment for 6 days, as opposed to I'm proposing to run mine for 30. The objective of my proposal for this experiment was to pinpoint exactly how long law enforcement has to recover a submerged weapon and still develop a latent print from that submerged item. By intermittently testing for these latent prints, I think that we can accurately determine a time frame, and by using 2 different methods and surface types, it just makes the information that much more accurate and able to pinpoint the deterioration period. By testing multiple types of surfaces, it really gives the best detection for a latent print, no matter what kind of surface it's on. My procedure has 2 parts. One is preparation, the other is processing. So for preparation, latent prints, all from the same individual, we placed on 30 glass slides and 30 aluminum metal strips, like a shiny, slick metal. Plastic containers will have holes drilled in the side of them. That allows the river water to flow into the container and keep its current and flow and the motion that it actually would have as if it was just laying in the river. This also exposes them to everything that's in the actual river water, the temperature, the changes in that temperature, any microorganisms, bacteria, plant life, everything else that would come into contact with a latent print if it was just on an item that was laying submerged in the river. So the items are going to be submerged in a section of the Mississippi River, secured to cinder blocks so that way they sink down, and with the buoy on top that's colored so that we can mark where exactly the containers have been sunk. The items will be submerged for 30 days, and each day 1 glass slide and 1 metal strip will be taken up out of the river and tested. For processing the latent prints, like I said, each day 1 of each type of item will be taken out to process a latent print. The glass slides will be processed using the molybdenum 5-sulfide or small particle reagent, and the metal strips will be tested using the cyanoacrylate and the black powder. After the prints are processed, they'll be photographed and scored on a scale from 0 to 5. 0 being no visible print, nothing can be detected, and then 5 being the most clear or very clear, almost perfect print that can be processed. By removing only 1 item per day and leaving the others to continue to be submerged, they really can pinpoint the time of the deterioration based on how long that they're in the water. The application of this experiment definitely benefits law enforcement. Establishing a definite timeline for law enforcement regarding how long they have to find a submerged weapon and lift a latent print from it is very important. This knowledge places a certain amount of urgency on types of investigations where they know that they need to find a weapon. Maybe their suspect told them that they threw it away, that it was submerged, or if they don't know where it is and they think it might be submerged in water, and they need to tie that weapon to a specific individual by lifting a latent print, they can do that. It's vital to investigations that they know how long they have to find that weapon and be able to lift a print before it deteriorates. I really think that this would benefit law enforcement in their investigations, and I think that this experiment is definitely worthwhile and would benefit many investigations and many facets of law enforcement. Thank you for listening to my proposal. I hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know if anyone has any questions. Thank you.